Prior to the recent intervention by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and other stakeholders along its value chain, the cotton, textile and garment CTG sector was heading for an imminent collapse. The CTG sector, which was the second largest employer of labor after the government in the 1960s through to the early 1980s, suffered a lull that plunged the industry into near extinction, as many of the textile factories stopped operation and had their staff laid off. Up until the CBN stepped in, there were only 25 textile factories operating below 20% of their production capacities, and the workforce in Nigeria's textile industry stood at less than 20,000 people. In addition, the cotton growing sector became moribund, thereby denying thousands of smallholder farmers the opportunity to earn a living. Furthermore, a large proportion of our clothing materials are imported from China and countries in Europe. Recent visits to farms and ginneries across the cotton-producing belt of Nigeria indicate that the stories and challenges were all the same.
If you ask anybody about textile, there are three challenges here. One, lack of funding, cheap funding. Two, he says electricity. But the biggest elephant in the room that people keep saying is if you don't deal with smuggling, if you don't deal with dumpers, what you will find is that even if you provide cheap funding, even if you provide electricity, we cannot do well.
Another feature observed was that all the active companies, which work seasonally, operated at below 40% of their installed capacity, with many producing less than 200,000 metric tons per season. Indeed, some ginning companies had been inactive for upwards of 10 years because many were unable to sell their produce due to the inability of the textile companies to offtake the stock from ginners. In some other cases, there was not enough feedstock to process and make available to the active textile mills. Since the ginning part of the value chain plays a vital role in churning out quality cotton products for both export and local production, the CBN turned its attention to it in order to enhance quality. Concerned about the downturn in cotton production and its implication for the Nigerian economy, the Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, working closely with the fiscal authorities, moved in to reverse the narrative of the past 2 decades.
We need to intervene to redirect our focus to the important role the textile industry played in our country. They did more than produce cottons and textiles. They indeed helped in sustaining the vitality of the neighborhoods in which they operated.
Like it did in the rice sector, the CBN made huge interventions in the cotton, textile and garment in a bid to revamp the sector. The objective of this intervention was clear: catalyze the local farmers to produce 450,000 metric tons of cotton in 3 years, which at 40% conversion rate translates to 18,000 metric tons of yarn. Furthermore, the CBN and other stakeholders sought to increase cotton production from 80,000 to 200,000 metric tons in 2020. Increase capacity of ginneries and textile sector industries in Nigeria to enable it attain self-sufficiency in cotton production in Nigeria by 2020, create jobs and enhance the skills of Nigerians in cotton commodity, facilitate easier access to funding for farmers, and minimizing smuggling and dumping of textile goods. Unveiling the commitment of the CBN, Mr. Emefiele at the beginning of 2019 pledged that the bank would provide financial support to textile manufacturers at single-digit rate to refit, retool and upgrade the textile factories in order to produce high-quality textile materials for the local and export markets. To further drive home the point, the bank, in line with a presidential directive, also restricted access to foreign exchange from the Nigerian foreign exchange market for the importation of all forms of textile materials and support the importation of cotton lint for use in textile factories, with the caveat that such importers shall begin sourcing all their cotton needs locally, beginning before the end of 2020.
As part of its Anchor Grower program, the CBN will support local growers of cotton to enable them meet the needs of the textile industries in Nigeria. The CBN shall support efforts to source high-yield cotton seedlings so as to ensure that yield from our cotton farmers meet global benchmarks.
As a first step in fixing the cotton value chain, which begins with planting, the CBN, collaborating with some state governments, embarked on the distribution of improved cotton seeds to 1,501,220 members of the National Cotton Association of Nigeria, NACOTAN, cultivating over 100,000 hectares in 27 states of the Federation. A yield of 302,440 metric tons is expected from the process. In line with the federal government's Executive Order 003, which requires ministries, departments, and agencies to give preference to local content in their procurement of goods and services, the CBN facilitated the signing of Memoranda of Understanding (MOU) between uniformed services in Nigeria and textile and garment factories, who in turn offtake the cotton from ginneries financed by the bank. Determined to get it right, the CBN again convened a meeting of stakeholders in the cotton, textile and garments CTG subsector on May 16, 2019, where the governor, Mr. Emefiele, inaugurated the steering committee to drive the process of perfecting timelines aimed at addressing part of the chain. The list of the value chain include planting and cultivating, harvesting and ginning, spinning, weaving, printing. Ginning is the most critical part of the cotton value chain. Ginning is simply a process of separating the cotton lint from the seed before spinning should the factory plan to spin or pack into bales for either export or for sale to local factories for spinning. To ensure the success of the initiative, a total of 13 ginning companies have been financed by the bank with about 24.9 billion naira to guarantee the full takeoff of the cotton produced by the farmers. The goal here is to enhance the capacity utilization of the ginneries from the current level of 15% to about 75%. With the border protection exercise by the federal government and the presidential directive to check smugglers of textile products, it is expected that the demand for indigenously manufactured textiles will increase and the sector will flourish again as it did in the 1980s, with textile factories spinning yarns across the country and employing millions of Nigerians. Determined to achieve self-sufficiency in the textiles and garment industry in the next 5 years, the mobilization of cotton farmers has commenced for the 2020 farming season, with a target put at a minimum of 300,000 cotton farmers. With the CBN support, which appears to be a magic formula, the ginneries are expected to once again spring back to life.